Saw dudes, last week I released a long overdue build to Khora Prime, and as such I can release round 1 of the level cap testing footage. The first run was a bit rough around the edges, but it does serve as a great foundation for those who would like to use her at the highest level. Khora's damage is ridiculous, and she was in the lead for the performance charts, but this run highlighted some of her shortcomings. Despite that, she is still a strong contender for a top spot, and will have a round 2 video that aims to rectify said issues. Let's get started. The Khora Prime build shown on screen was featured in the dedicated build video. I used Roar over Venari as a universal modifier. This loadout is focused on leveraging melee influence as much as possible. For the aura, I used Brief Respite for the shield gating on ability cast. This was vital to survivability and allowed Khora to chug through bullet hell. Cutting Drift increased the effective range of Whipclaw, Ensnare, Roar, and Strangledome, though the most important is Whipclaw. Archon Continuity increases ability duration, but because the loadout does not focus on using toxin damage on Whipclaw, this can be swapped out for Prime Continuity to save a bit of mod space. Prime Flow increases the energy maximum to 641, and activates the bonus buff from the melee critical damage Archon Shards used later on. Archon Stretch further increases ability range, and provides 2 energy per second for 5 seconds upon applying electricity procs to enemies with abilities. Since Whipclaw will be doing this consistently, this is a great choice. Equilibrium helps pad out energy economy with the use of Synth Deconstruct. Catalyzing Shields is used to supplement the shield gating tech from Brief Respite and the following Augur Reach, which is the final increase to ability range and also contributes to shield gating tech through its set bonus. Pilfering Strangledome allows enemies caught in Strangledome to have a chance to drop additional loot when killed. This is not a requirement. I used it because a viewer wanted me to. I recommend swapping this to either Streamline or Energy Nexus for better results. The final mod is Accumulating Whipclaw, which grants a stacking damage bonus to subsequent Whipclaws upon hitting at least 3 enemies in a single cast, which will decay after 10 seconds. The decay rate is extremely slow, making it perfect for transitioning from one group to the next. Roar is used over Venari since it acts as a universal bane mod and gets triple dipped in damage calculations for melee influence. Venari's core ability is not all that useful and gets outshone by other options, so there's no loss there. The arcane combo I ran was Arcane Fury for increased melee damage and Arcane Aegis for even more survivability. Arcane Fury increases melee damage on critical hits, which happens often with Khora's builds. Arcane Aegis provides a shield recharge buff, which works wonders with Brief Respite and the other shield regenerating mods. This effectively makes Khora immune to all sorts of damage other than certain damage over time procs like Toxin. For this run, I used 1 Tauforge Amber Shard and 4 Tauforge Violet Shards. The Amber Shard reduces the casting speed of abilities, making Khora less vulnerable in general. The 4 other shards dramatically increase the outgoing damage of Whipclaw since it jacks up critical damage. The Whipclaw build later on can achieve over 100% crit chance, meaning it can leverage the increased critical multiplier at all times. The buff is further accentuated by Khora's energy maximum being over 500, increasing the amount of brain damage inflicted onto enemies. The build for Whipclaw Prime is extremely simple. The stance doesn't matter because it is baked into the weapon itself. Prime Pressure Point adds more base damage, and Condition Overload allows damage to be scaled up based on the number of applied status effects. Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds increase critical chance and status chance respectively, which is important for increasing the outgoing damage of electricity procs spread by melee influence. Galvanized Elementalist increases status damage and further increases status chance on kill. Galvanized Steel increases base crit chance and increases crit damage on kill. Organ Shatter further increases crit damage and takes the place of a Bane mod since Khora is using Roar. Shocking Touch is required since it will allow for melee influence to proc. As you may already know, melee influence is the core of the loadout and allows Whipclaw to spread electricity procs to do the bulk of the damage to crowds. The raw damage alone from Whipclaw is great, but melee influence allows it to have a better effective range. Now we have Venari. Tech Assault grants Venari a chance to avoid lethal damage and makes up for Roar taking over Venari's dedicated ability respawn. Pack Leader causes melee hits with our Warframe weapon to heal Venari and grants Overguard if she is already at max HP. This is incredible for increasing Venari's survivability. If you have the Prime version, please use that instead. Momentous Bond increases Venari's outgoing damage upon killing an Eximus unit. Aerial Bond makes Venari a walking fridge by causing her to slow enemies while Khora is airborne. Contagious Bond allows Venari to spread stats effects to nearby enemies on kills. Tenacious Bond serves as a critical damage buff to Khora's weapons. Vicious Bond strips armor on Venari's melee attacks. Link Redirection adds shields to Venari's defenses, allowing her to shield gate and reduce her chance of going down further. Primed Animal Instinct is a quality of life mod for gameplay. Fierce Sense takes the spot of Fetch since it does not stack amongst pets. The damage buff it provides is multiplicative, making it incredibly valuable for scaling. Then there are Venari's Mittens. I chose to use Assassin Posture so that Eximus units are locked down quickly. Maul increases melee damage, and Bite increases critical chance and critical damage. Radon Claws apply radiation stats to enemies, increasing their priming potential. Swipe increases attack range. Burning Claws applies heat damage and is another element for priming. Heat has the added benefit of reducing enemy armor further, making subsequent Whipclaw casts hit harder. Bellringer allows Venari's attacks to apply impact procs and knock down enemies. Magnetic Strike allows Bellringer's impact procs to also apply magnetic procs. Finally, Call the Weak acts like a pet version of Condition Overload. For the primary weapon, I chose Cedo Prime. It is a solid weapon, and something I haven't used in a while, so I figured I would take it out of the safe. The build itself is fairly standard, with the only loadout specific item being primary dexterity, which increases the melee combo counter duration. This is essential for Whipclaw, since it reduces the amount of times needed to rebuild said combo counter. Epitaph Prime took up my secondary slot since it is a tried and true priming weapon. Much of the build is pretty basic, so I'll stick to covering the main points. The elemental combo on the gun is magnetic and corrosive, with the force cold procs from the weapon's quick shots. Augur Seeker is on the build to add to the shield gating capability of Khora. Secondary Fortifier allows shots to leech overguard from overguarded units, which grants knockdown immunity and status immunity. This covers almost all bases for damage mitigation. Khora generally doesn't use melee weapons, so I chose to use Furax Wraith for its unique bonus mod. The Incarnon perks I used were Swordsman's Flourish, Moonrise Velocity, and Flashing Bleed. The perks here don't actually matter since the whole gimmick comes from one mod. The star of the show is Amalgam Furax Body Count, a mod that increases the fire rate of secondary weapons by 45%. The rationale behind using this weapon altogether was to increase the amount of priming that can be done by Epitaph Prime in a short period. Truthfully though, you can use any melee weapon you would like. For the second companion, I used a Panzer Build since I needed the extra safety. Viral Quills allowed for viral priming, Martyr Symbiosis acts as a get-out-of-jail-free card, Panzer Devolution makes the goodest boy immortal. Synth Deconstruct allows enemies that are injured by the Panzer to have a chance to drop a health orb, allowing Equilibrium to regen some energy throughout the mission. Momentous Bond increases its damage and reduces its incapacitation timer upon killing an Eximus unit. Tenacious Bond adds another critical damage increase. To be clear, it does stack with Venari's equipped copy. Reinforced Bond increases the fire rate of ranged weapons, and Calculated Redirection allows Reinforced Bond to be active at all times. Primed Animal Instinct and Fetch are quality of life mods. The Claw build is the same as usual. Shocking Claws activates Archon Stretch's passive for energy regen over time. The rest of the build is meant to proc Tenacious Bond or do some decent damage to enemies. Unlike Venari, the Panzer is not meant to do big damage and instead serves as a support. Madurai is the focus school I used because it is the best for level cap Void Cascade. Void Strike and Void Fuel were backups in case Khora went down, which did happen in the run due to ongoing energy issues. Phoenix Talons was wonderful for increasing the damage of Whipclaw's physical damage portion. Sling Strength was a straightforward buff to Whipclaw and Roar, and allowed for better damage scaling later on. The amp I used was a standard 147, also known as the Certus Brace, Rat Black Prism, and Fat Scaffold. This is the amp I always use, and I recommend it the most out of every other amp combination for level cap runs. I use Magus Cloud, Magus Lockdown, Eternal Eradicate, and Eternal Onslaught as my operator arcanes. Time to talk about the run. This run was not the smoothest. Although we completed 120 Exilizer purges, it just did not go as well as I thought it would. Let's start with the bad news, then work to the good news. The first issue, and the most prevalent throughout the run, was energy economy. During the run, it felt like Khora was running out of energy way too often upon using Whipclaw. This was a problem because Khora relied on shield gating to stay alive and often used other abilities between enemy hordes. Even with Equilibrium Instant Deconstruct, Khora was often running out of energy spamming Whipclaw to kill enemy groups. This was caused the melee combo counter to disappear due to a lack of energy despite the use of primary dexterity. Energy issues were so bad that Ensnare, Roar, and Strangledome became hard to cast. Most of the energy issues can be attributed to weird enemy spawns. You'll notice throughout the gameplay that enemy groups would spawn behind the new Exilizers. This would cause energy orbs to be exceedingly rare and health orbs even more rare. Oftentimes, I would go back and fight enemies that were away from Exilizers just to get more energy through Equilibrium. This wasted time and made the run less efficient. Now, let's go over why energy issues were super bad for Whipclaw. When energy runs out for a long period, the combo counter on Whipclaw resets. Most of the damage from Whipclaw can be attributed to combo stacking mods like Blood Rush and Weeping Wounds. When the combo counter resets, Khora's outgoing damage suffers. She then has to build up a combo again to reach the maximum stacks of melee combo to output optimal damage. This wastes both time and energy, making the issue even worse. Even though I did the most damage in the run, I still feel that there was a large amount of damage left on the table. Long story short, this run could have been much better if energy were not such a pain pain in the butt. One other problem I had with the run was that Whipclaw was somewhat inconsistent with landing on enemies. For Thrax units, Whipclaw could just phase through them. This wasted time and energy, slowing down the Exerlizer purging. This would happen a couple of times throughout the run and would bottom out my energy pool. It's not something you should worry about too much, but the problem was exacerbated due to the aforementioned energy issues. Now let's move on to the pros. First of all, Khora's outgoing damage is no joke. When everything lined up, Whipclaw could handle a group of enemies within a mere couple of seconds. Melee influence had a lot to do with that, but the raw damage alone could kill priority targets. Sometimes yellow and orange crits were enough to kill enemies outright with the raw damage, while weaker enemies would succumb to the electricity procs. Venari was also a massive help in the run. With the way she was modded, her damage could kill at level cap, and often did against Thrax units or Eximus units. Venari only went down twice, if I'm correct, but even then her absence was felt. During the long energy drought, Venari was picking up the slack, applying tons of damage and heat procs, which shredded armor and allowed Thrax units to go down much quicker than with my guns alone. To sum it all up nicely, Khora can do exceedingly well in level cap, but her energy issues need to be addressed. My use of Pilfering Strangledome is more of a meme than an actual strategy. To be honest, it was a dare from a viewer, but it was a fun challenge to go over. Yes, it can be used in endurance missions, but it should be used alongside a Warframe that can provide energy. Otherwise, I would suggest using Energy Nexus or Streamline to avoid the issues that I had in my run. However, you may have better luck with enemy spawns or just not encounter the same energy issues altogether. Can I recommend Khora Prime? Yes, she's a very strong Warframe that can leverage her companion to the highest level. Even with my issues in level cap, her outgoing damage is extreme, and if her energy issues can be mitigated, she is likely going to be one of the best level cap Warframes. Her strong, albeit laid-back playstyle makes her easy to pick up for newish players. That being said, her entire build is not inexpensive. She requires investment in herself, Whipclaw, Venari, and Venari's Claws. That alone might scare off a ton of players. However, her high level of versatility and damage with Venari alone make it worthwhile. I will be making the round 2 video with a different loadout that hopefully addresses the issues in this video. I do feel it is a good idea to share the findings of this run so that others can optimize it, like I have outlined earlier. Admittedly, many of the issues seen in the run can be mitigated just by using Streamline or Energy Nexus over Pilfering Strangledome, but that itself does not deserve its own dedicated video. I hope this level cap video helped. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching, and happy farming. Stay safe.
done.